At first glance, this photo looks like a postcard moment. A woman strolling along a stunning beach, the sun glistening on the waves behind her. It seems like a scene of tranquility, of someone savoring life. But sometimes, photos can lie. Beneath their serene surface, they hide stories far darker than you can imagine. This is one of those photos. The woman you see here is Crystal Candelario, a 31-year-old mother from Cleveland, Ohio. There's many wonderful photos from Alabama. She's on vacation enjoying the freedom of the open skies and sandy beaches. But back in her hometown, a nightmare was unfolding, one entirely of her own making. Crystal was a single mother to her 16-month-old daughter, Jillian, a bright-eyed toddler just beginning to explore her world. But Crystal's approach to motherhood had always raised concerns among those who knew her. Neighbors recalled incidents. Once Crystal had left Jillian with a neighbor for what was supposed to be a weekend. That weekend turned into 6 weeks without any notice or explanation. Even more troubling, in early 2023, Crystal reportedly left Jillian alone in their home for 2 entire days. A 16-month-old, unable to fend for herself, was abandoned with no food or care. Then came June 2023, the month Crystal decided to take her long-awaited vacation. On June 6th, Crystal packed her bags and left Cleveland for a 10-day trip to Puerto Rico. In Detroit, social media posts documented her getaway. Scenic beaches, sunny days, and moments of pure relaxation. One particular photo captured her standing barefoot in the sand, the ocean stretching endlessly behind her. Her caption read, "The time that is enjoyed is the true time lived." But while Crystal was basking in the sun, Jillian was left behind in their Cleveland home, alone. For 10 days, the 16-month-old was confined to a playpen with nothing but a few bottles of milk. No one came to check on her, no one heard her cries, or perhaps no one cared to act. Neighbors later admitted they had heard faint cries from the house during those days, but the sounds eventually stopped. When Crystal returned home on June 16th, she found Jillian unresponsive in the playpen. The liner beneath her was soaked with urine and feces. The air thickened with tears, just long enough for the pain to hit on before calling. 911, Crystal changed Jillian into clean clothes, as if that could erase what had happened. Paramedics arrived to find a heartbreaking scene. Jillian's tiny body was emaciated, her weight reduced by nearly a third since her last doctor's visit. The medical examiner would later confirm that she had died from starvation and dehydration. Crystal had left her baby to die. In the days that followed, investigators pieced together the horrifying timeline. Surveillance footage from a neighbor's doorbell camera captured Jillian's cries just 2 days after Crystal left. But by then, she was already running out of food and water. Crystal, meanwhile, was documenting her vacation bliss online. The case shocked the community and made headlines nationwide. In February 2024, Crystal pleaded guilty to charges of aggravated murder to avoid the death penalty. During her sentencing, her defense attorney pointed to her history of mental health struggles, claiming that she had stopped taking antidepressants earlier that year. But the court showed no mercy. On March 18, 2024, Crystal was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As Judge Brendan Sheehan delivered the sentence, he called Crystal's actions the ultimate act of betrayal, condemning the unimaginable suffering Jillian endured in her final days. Now, when you look at this photo, it's impossible to see it as just a woman on vacation. This image hides a terrible truth. It's a snapshot of a mother who chose freedom over responsibility, a moment of carefree indulgence, while her child was left to die in isolation. Jillian's story is a heartbreaking reminder that what we see on the surface often conceals far more than we realize. At first glance, This photo may seem like a simple snapshot, just a 14-year-old girl posing before leaving for what she thought would be an ordinary night at a friend's house. But behind this seemingly innocent image lies a chilling story, one that would haunt her family forever. This is Emilia Sjoberg, and this photo was the last one taken of her before she vanished on July 21st, 2024. Emilia was excited for her first ever sleepover, a night of fun and freedom that she'd been looking forward to, or so she thought. But before she left, something was off. Her mother, Anna, recalls how Emilia had seemed distant and anxious that day, their last conversation, tinged with tension after an argument. Emilia, sensing the strain, sent a heartfelt text to her mother. "Sorry for being difficult. I love you. You're my life." Anna would never hear from her daughter again. Emilia's excitement was due to more than just the sleepover. It was her first party. She'd spent most of her life in foster care and had only just returned home, ready to rebuild a life with her mother. The two were working on creating a fresh start, even choosing furniture together for Emilia's new room. But that dream was shattered in a way no one could have predicted. The two girls who invited Emilia had other plans, dark, sinister plans. Investigators later learned they had gone to great lengths to prepare sealing tape and a knife from local stores. What Emilia didn't know was that the party she was walking into wasn't going to be a celebration at all. Instead of a house full of laughter, Emilia found herself in an abandoned industrial area near the train tracks in Landskrona, Sweden. What started as a disagreement, possibly over a boy, quickly escalated into something much darker. The two girls restrained Emilia with tape and, in an act of unimaginable cruelty, assaulted her with a knife. They showed no mercy. When the police discovered Emilia's body 2 days later on the morning of July 23rd, the details of the crime were horrific. Her neck was slashed, her body covered in bruises and cuts, and though the authorities tried desperately to save her, it was already too late. But what's even more disturbing than the brutal attack itself was what the perpetrators did next. They filmed the entire ordeal, capturing every gruesome moment on camera. But it didn't stop there. Once the video was made, they shared it with others in a group chat, proudly boasting about their crime. Investigators have called the recording a crucial piece of evidence, but the existence of such a thing is almost incomprehensible. The two girls, one just 15 and the other only 13, were arrested shortly after Emilia's body was found. Both confessed to their involvement, though one of them tried to downplay the severity of their actions, claiming things had gotten out of hand. The stolen tape and knives, along with the video evidence, tell a very different story. This was no spontaneous act. It was premeditated and planned with chilling precision. Additional evidence was uncovered at the scene, including Emilia's bag, which was found discarded near the water, along with her personal items and bank cards. The knives used in the attack were also recovered. Emilia, a young girl who trusted her friends, had been lured into a deadly trap, believing she was going to a party, only to have her life violently ripped away. Anna Sjoberg, Emilia's mother, had been transparent about her grief. She's shared the painful reality of what it's been like to lose her daughter, who is finally coming home, finally reconnecting after years apart. Instead of watching her daughter thrive, Anna is left with the unimaginable weight of a loss that will haunt her forever. This story isn't just about a horrific crime. It's about trust betrayed in the most terrifying way and the devastating ripple effect it leaves behind. Meet Grace Main, a vibrant 22-year-old from England with a passion for travel and a world of opportunities ahead of her. Grace had spent months planning the adventure of a lifetime, visiting South America, before arriving in New Zealand in November 2018. Auckland was another stop on her journey, a city bustling with life and excitement. She was eager to explore, meet people, and make unforgettable memories. On December 1st, the night before her 22nd birthday, Grace arranged to meet someone she had matched with on Tinder. A man named Jesse Kempson. She messaged a friend about their plans, saying, "I click so well with him," and promising to update her the next day. That evening, Grace and Jesse met in Auckland's city center. CCTV footage captured them chatting, laughing, and moving between bars. To anyone watching, it looked like a typical date. At 9:30 p.m., they were last seen leaving a venue together and entering the City Life Hotel where Jesse was staying. In the elevator, Jesse appeared relaxed, fumbling slightly with his key card as they headed to his room. But what happened behind that door would forever change the narrative. Sometime that night, Jesse Kempson took Grace's life. While the exact details remain unclear, the evidence pieced together paints a grim picture. By 1:30 a.m., Grace was dead, her lifeless body lying in the room as Kempson calmly searched his phone for terms like hottest, fire, and information on the remote Waitakere Ranges near Auckland. He even browsed adult content during this time, his actions disturbingly detached from the reality of what he had done. The following morning, Grace's body was still in the room, but Kempson's focus had shifted. He contacted another woman on Tinder, attempting to arrange a date later that day. Then CCTV footage showed him leaving the hotel to purchase a suitcase and cleaning supplies. By the time he returned, his plan was in motion. Kempson rented a red Toyota hatchback and was soon seen loading a lovely Toyota. This time, it carried 2 suitcases. In one of them lay Grace's body, folded into a fetal position. Meanwhile, Grace's family in England grew increasingly concerned. It was her 22nd birthday, and she hadn't responded to their messages. By December 5th, after days of silence, her parents reported her missing. The police began their search, treating it initially as a routine investigation. But as they dug deeper, it became clear this was no ordinary disappearance. On December 9, 2018, police found Grace's body in the Waitakere Ranges, a remote area outside Auckland. Kempson's movements, tracked through CCTV and rental car records, led them to the burial site. Grace had been wrapped and buried a shovel nearby that police believe was used to dig her shallow grave. Kempson was arrested on December 8th, just a day before Grace's body was discovered. In court, he showed no signs of remorse. Even as evidence mounted against him, he pleaded not guilty, claiming her death was an accident. His defense argued the events in the hotel room were consensual, but the evidence told a much darker story. In February 2020, Jesse Kempson was found guilty of Grace's murder and sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 17 years before parole. But the story didn't end there. When his name suppression was lifted, the public learned that Grace wasn't his only victim. Kempson had a history of violent crimes, including attacking assaults against other women. One of his victims, another British tourist, came forward after recognizing him in the news. And that brings us back to the haunting CCTV image of a man in an elevator with a suitcase. On the surface, it looks ordinary, unremarkable, but knowing what we now know, it takes on a chilling weight. That suitcase held the body of Grace Mean, a young woman full of life, taken far too soon by someone she thought she could trust. This photograph captures a moment of simplicity. Miriam Rodriguez, sitting close to her daughter Karen, gazing at the camera. The image appears calm, nothing more than a mother and her child. But for Miriam, this moment was far from ordinary. It was the calm before a storm that would change her life in ways no parent should ever endure. Miriam wasn't a well-known figure. She wasn't a detective, a police officer, or anyone in a position of power. She was simply a mother. But her fight for justice would make her a hero, not for what she was, but for what she did for the love of her daughter. The story begins on January 24th, 2014, at 4 a.m. Miriam's phone rang, and it was her eldest daughter, Alia, on the line. What Alia said would set Miriam on a path no parent should have to walk. The day before, Karen, Miriam's 20-year-old daughter, was driving through San Fernando, headed to help her mother at their family-owned business, Rodeo Boots, a small cowboy boot shop. Karen never made it. 2 vehicles surrounded Karen's car, and armed men dragged her from the driver's seat. They transported her to the Rodriguez family home, where they tied her up and prepared to make their demands. This was not an uncommon occurrence in San Fernando. The Zetas cartel, a brutal offshoot of the Gulf cartel, controlled the region, and kidnappings had become a grim norm. As the days stretched into weeks, Miriam and her husband followed the kidnappers' demands, borrowing money to pay the ransom. The money was dropped at a designated location, but Karen never returned. Desperation set in, and Miriam continued to fight for answers. She met with a man connected to the cartel, but he only led her deeper into despair, taking money without delivering any answers. After several more ransom demands, Miriam realized the heartbreaking truth. Karen wasn't coming back. But Miriam wasn't ready to give up. She made a promise to herself, one she would keep. She would not stop until she brought those responsible to justice. Miriam's first clue came from the very cartel member who had failed her. He had given her nothing but a name, Sumer, but that was enough. Miriam, using every resource at her disposal, tracked him down via Facebook, building the puzzle piece by piece. Her determination led her to Sumer's house, where she started gathering information about him and those around him. She didn't stop there. Miriam dyed her hair red and posed as a government worker, conducting surveys. Through her persistence, she was able to gather enough intel to bring authorities into the fold. When Sumer was arrested, it led to more revelations. He gave up the names of others involved in Karen's abduction. Among them was an 18-year-old named Zapata Gonzalez, who led Miriam to a ranch where Karen had been taken. It was at this ranch that Miriam found some of Karen's belongings: a scarf, a cushion from her truck, and eventually part of Karen's remains. The discovery confirmed the brutal truth, but it also fueled Miriam's resolve. She couldn't stop now. Miriam's relentless search continued, taking her to unexpected places. She recalled a strange encounter with Elia Betancourt at a restaurant near the ranch. Miriam had brushed off Elia's odd behavior at the time, but now with Karen's death hanging over her, Miriam couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that Elia knew more than she let on. By digging into Elia's life, Miriam learned that Elia had been in a relationship with one of Karen's kidnappers. It wasn't long before Miriam discovered that the ransom calls had come from Elia's home. Armed with this information, Miriam approached the authorities once again. After weeks of waiting, Miriam saw her chance. She spotted Elia outside the prison, and with police intervention, Elia was arrested. The investigation confirmed Miriam's suspicions. Elia had been directly involved in the kidnapping operation. But Miriam's search didn't end with Elia. She continued to track down every individual connected to Karen's abduction. One lead took her to Enrique Flores, a man who had seemingly left his criminal life behind. Miriam sat through church services in his hometown, quietly waiting until she was sure it was him. She handed the information to the police, who arrested him during a Sunday service. The final man on her list was a florist who had gone into hiding at the Texas border. Miriam didn't hesitate. Armed with a pistol, she tracked him down, chased him across the crowded bridge, and held him at gunpoint until the police arrived. Miriam's relentless pursuit of justice brought 10 individuals connected to Karen's kidnapping to justice. But her mission didn't stop there. She went on to form Colectivo de Desaparecidos de San Fernando, the Vanished Collective of San Fernando, a support group for families whose loved ones had disappeared. Miriam's bravery drew attention, but not all of it was welcome. In early 2017, 29 inmates, including some of Karen's abductors, escaped from a penitentiary. Miriam knew the risks and requested police protection. On May 10, 2017, while returning home on crutches After a foot injury, she was confronted outside her home by a white Nissan. Inside were the men who had escaped prison. Before Miriam could react, they shot her 12 times. She died shortly after. Miriam's death was a tragic loss, but her legacy lives on. 2 of her killers were arrested, and another was killed in a shootout. Her son tried to keep her work going, but without Miriam's unwavering drive, the collective slowly dissolved. Despite this, Miriam's fight for justice continues to inspire others. Miriam wasn't a person of power, a mother who refused to let her daughter's story fade into silence. Through her tireless search, Karen's name was never forgotten, and neither is Miriam's.